You are welcome to our lesson. So this is a continuation on balancing chemical equations, where we'll be looking at more examples on balancing chemical equations. So just as a matter of recap, we said last time that every atom that is found on the reactant side must also appear on the product side, and with the number of atoms on the reactant side must be the same number of atoms on the product side. So now today we're going to do more examples and try to balance them. So the first example that we're going to have is sodium hydroxide that is reacting with hydrochloric acid to produce sodium chloride and water. So from what we discussed last time, we said you just have to account for every atom that is found on the reactant side first, then you transition to the product side. So the first atom here is sodium. The following atom here is oxygen. The following atom here is element, just one and the same thing. So hydrogen. Then the other one, so hydrogen has already been written, it's already there. Then the following element is chlorine. Okay, so just transfer this same information here, since we understand that every atom that is found on the reactant side must also appear on the reactant side. So that information should be the same, and each and every atom must be accounted for like that. Very good. So now the quick thing to do here is so there's only one atom of sodium here in this entire part. For the reactant side, there's only one. So how many atoms of oxygen are there? One. Okay. What about hydrogen atom? So you have one plus another one, so you have two. So there's nothing like guessing. What you are seeing is what is happening. Then chlorine, you have how many? So you have one, so you write one. Then you move to the product side. How many atoms of sodium are you seeing? Not you that you think are supposed to be there, but how many are actually there? So from what we are seeing here, we have one. What about oxygen? Oxygen, we have one. What about hydrogen? So there's these two, like I said in the previous video, that this number that is seen as a base is only for the element that is before it. So hydrogen, so this simply means that we have two atoms of hydrogen element. So hydrogen, we have two. What about chlorine? Chlorine, we have how many? We have one. So you now compare sodium there, how many? One. What about there? One. Oxygen there? One. This other side? One. Hydrogen here? Two. What about the other side? Two. Chlorine here, we have how many? One. The other side? One. So we can conclude to say the equation is already balanced. Okay, so the equation is already balanced. So let's try and see if we can come up with it. You can try to solve the next example, where we have calcium metal reacting with sulfuric acid to produce calcium sulfate and hydrogen gas. Okay, so quickly let's see if we can try to Soviet. Excuse me. Okay. So B. So B, we are saying we have calcium reacting with sulfuric acid to produce calcium sulfate and the hydrogen gas. So you do the exact thing. Analyze, account for all the atoms involved. So the first one, we have calcium. The next element is hydrogen. The following element is sulfur. Then the last element is oxygen. Okay, you account for them like that. So just transfer this same information and indicate it on the product side. Hydrogen, how many? Sulfur, then oxygen. So the next thing now is simply comparing. So what we have here, so we have calcium. How many atoms of calcium are here? We have 1. How many atoms of hydrogen are here? There's this number here which is 2, so 2. Okay, how many atoms of sulfur? We have 1. How many atoms of oxygen are shown here? There's that number there, so we have 4. This other side, how many atoms of calcium? We have 1. Hydrogen, how many atoms are shown there? 2. Then sulfur, how many atoms are shown there? 1. Then oxygen, how many atoms? 4. So it all seems even this one is already balanced. So calcium there, 1. Calcium, 1. Hydrogen, 2. Another hydrogen, 2. So here hydrogen is balanced. Sulfur, 1, 1. Sulfur is also balanced. Oxygen there, 4, 4. Oxygen is balanced. So we can conclude to say, hence the equation is already balanced. Then we conclude. So let's try and solve the next one, where we have barium nitrate, which is a soluble salt reacting with copper sulfate, another soluble salt that will help us produce barium sulfate and copper nitrate. So barium sulfate is insoluble, copper nitrate is soluble. So this type of salt is prepared by a process known as precipitation. Okay, all right, so you have barium nitrate reacting with copper to sulfate to produce let me use space in case we might need to put a number there. Okay, barium sulfate and copper nitrate. Okay, so you do the exact thing, account for all the atoms that are there. So this is barium, you have nitrogen, you have oxygen, you have copper, you have sulfur and oxygen. This is a whole list. Okay, so you transfer the exact same information from there. Okay, oxygen, copper, sulfur, oxygen. So now that you have that information all compiled, now the only remaining thing is just accounting for all the elements that are there. So number 1, we have 1, so there's only one barium atom there. We move to nitrogen. How many? Remember that there are these brackets. So these brackets, it simply means that everything that is here is multiplied by 2. So since here on nitrogen there's only 1 inside, times 2, so we have 2 atoms of nitrogen. Then the next thing is oxygen. So oxygen, you have how many? 3. 3 times 2, that is 6. Then you move to copper. How many atoms of copper are seen there? There's only 1. Sulfur, how many atoms? 1. Oxygen, how many atoms? So for oxygen, we already have oxygen there, so this one can be removed. Okay, so you have 3 times, so this is what you need to make sure that you account for all the atoms in this case. So since we said 3 times 2 is 6, plus how many? 4. So here we are supposed to have 10 and not 6. So 10. Then we move to the other side. Barium, how many do we have? We have 1. Sulfur, how many do we have? 1. So this oxygen is already there, so there's no need to write another one. Okay, so nitrogen, how many do we have? So you have N, and remember there are these brackets, so you have 2. And then when you come to oxygen, so you have 3 times 2, which is 6, plus 4, you have 10. This one is also seems it is already balanced. So copper, you have 1. So the only thing remaining there is simply comparing. So you compare, what do you have there? Barium 1. What about there? 1. Nitrogen 2. Nitrogen there 2, balanced. Oxygen, how many? It is also balanced. We have 10 there, oxygen there 10, copper 1, sulfur 1 also there. So we can conclude to say the equation is already balanced. Already balanced. Okay, so the last example now is where we have sodium hydroxide that is reacting with sulfuric acid to produce sodium sulfate and water. So you have sodium hydroxide reacting with sulfuric acid to produce sodium sulfate and water. Let's try and see if we can balance this equation. I hope so far you are enjoying what we are doing, and you can now be able to freely practice on your own. Okay, so we have sodium hydroxide reacting with sulfuric acid to produce sodium sulfate and water. So sulfuric acid is amino acid. It is an inorganic type of acid, just for your own information. So let's account for all the atoms involved here and sulfur. So I think we managed to account for the atoms there on the reactant side. So let's try to do the same on the product side. Okay, alright, So I think we have accounted for all the atoms involved. So let's see, sodium, how many atoms of sodium do we have here? We have 1. This is good. Okay, then oxygen, how many atoms do we have? 0. There we have plus, so 0 here we have for this oxygen here 1, then plus 4, so we have 5. Then hydrogen, how many? So we have 2 plus 1, that is 3. Then sulfur, how many do we have here? So we have 1. Then we move to this other one. So sodium atoms, how many do we have? We have 2. Oxygen, how many do we have? We have 4 plus 1, that is 5. Okay, this is good. Then we move to hydrogen. Here we have how many? 2. Okay, so we have 2 atoms of oxygen, 2 atoms of oxygen. Okay, then what about sulfur? Sulfur we have 1. So let's try and see whether the equation that we have here is balanced or not. So when you check, you realize that sodium is not balanced. Here on the reactant side we have 1 atom of sodium, whereas on the product side we have 2 atoms of sodium. But for oxygen is balanced here and there. Then hydrogen also is not balanced. So here on the reactant side we have 3 atoms of hydrogen, and on the product side we have 2 atoms of hydrogen. Then on sulfur, the reactant side, we have 1, so sulfur is balanced. So now we need to balance sodium and hydrogen. So you will notice that whatever we do in order to ensure that sodium balances, it may affect other things. So we have to also account for all those. So now let's try and see if we can be able to balance. Okay, so here we have, let's say the smallest number that we can use to balance sodium is 2. Let's say we put 2 there. So it would mean if we put 2 there, it would mean we have now 2 atoms of sodium. Then what about oxygen? Oxygen will also be affected. So instead of having 5 atoms of oxygen, we are going to have 2 plus 4, which is 6. Okay, 6. Then what about hydrogen? So hydrogen, instead of having 3, we are going to now have 2 plus 2, which is 4. Sulfur remains unaffected. Then now, is this equation balanced? The answer is no. So now that we have balanced sodium, we've also noticed that hydrogen is not balanced, oxygen is not also balanced, so we need to balance it as well. Okay, so how do we do it? So if you look at the smallest number that we have, let's try to balance hydrogen. So how do we balance hydrogen? So here we are told that hydrogen we have 4. So if we put a number there, the smallest number, so that we balance hydrogen, so 2 times 2 we have 4. Okay, then so now it means that we have 2 atoms of oxygen plus 4 atoms of oxygen, so in total we are going to have 6. Okay, so now these, they will balance. So sodium, how many atoms? 2. Sodium, how many atoms this side? 2. Oxygen, how many atoms? 6. And what about this side? We should have 6 again. Yes. So hydrogen, how many atoms? 4. What about this side? We have 4. Sulfur, how many atoms? 1. So our equation is balanced. it balances like that. So you put a coefficient as 2, then you put another coefficient on water to make it balanced. So thank you for watching, and hopefully you'll be able to enjoy and solve other equations. Thank you very much.